The electric frying pan hummed on the worktop by 4:30, and every British mum knew it was the fastest road to a hot tea. No waiting for the oven to warm, no juggling 3 rings on the hob, just plug it in, twist the dial, and feed 6 hungry mouths before the telly warmed up. These were the weeknight dinners that rescued 1,000 tired evenings, all cooked in that one heavy pan with the little temperature knob on the side. 25 of them have quietly vanished from British kitchens. Let us count them down, starting with number 25. Number 25. Fried bread and dripping opened the week for families who had run their purse down to the coppers. Mum kept a jar of beef dripping cooling by the cooker, saved from Sunday's joint, and on a Thursday when the wage packet was thin, she would set the electric pan to a steady heat and lay in thick slices of yesterday's loaf. The bread drank up that golden fat, crisping at the edges while the middle stayed soft and rich with the memory of roast beef. A cracked egg alongside made it a proper tea. Bread cost around £1 a loaf in the late 1950s, and nothing was ever thrown away. Children came in from the cold and smelled it 3 rooms off. It was the humblest thing the pan ever produced, and for many households, one of the most loved. Dietary worries and toast poppers pushed it out, and it faded quietly away. Number 24. Spam fritters turned a tin from the back of the cupboard into a feast the children actually cheered for. Mum sliced the pink loaf thick, dipped each piece in a plain flour and water batter, and slid them into the shimmering fat of the electric pan, set high enough to blister the coating gold. The batter puffed and crackled, the spam warmed through soft and salty, and served with chips and a pool of brown sauce, it silenced the whole table. A tin of spam cost around 1 and 6 in the early 1960s and stretched to feed a family with a fritter each. Wartime habits had made tinned meat respectable, and the fritter was its finest hour. Children fought over the crispiest one. As fresh meat grew cheaper and the word processed turned into an insult, the spam fritter slipped off the weekly menu, surviving now only in chip shops and fond memory. Number 23. Corned beef hash carried a family through the coldest weeks with almost nothing in the larder. Mum diced boiled potatoes and onions, tipped in a tin of corned beef broken up with a fork, and pressed the lot flat into the buttered electric pan to fry until a brown crust formed underneath. The trick was patience, leaving it alone long enough to catch and crisp before turning it in slabs. A splash of Worcestershire sauce lifted it, and a fried egg on top made it Sunday good on a Tuesday. A tin of corned beef cost around £1, and the hash it made fed 5. The smell of frying onions and salty beef told the street that tea was near. It was the taste of thrift and security both. When mince grew affordable and freezers filled with ready meals, the hash quietly disappeared. Number 22. Scrambled eggs, done properly, were a small triumph of the electric pan's steady low heat. Mum swore by the dial for this one, keeping the pan just warm enough that the eggs never caught or turned to rubber. She beat 6 with a splash of milk and a knob of butter, poured them into the gentle heat, and stirred slow with a wooden spoon until they came together in soft, glossy curds. Piled onto buttered toast with a grind of pepper, it was tea in 5 minutes flat on the busiest of nights. Eggs from the corner shop cost pennies, and most families ate them several times a week. Children too tired for a proper meal always managed a plate of these. The thermostat did what no distracted mother watching a hot hob could, and held the temperature perfectly. Convenience and cholesterol scares together thinned this dish from the weeknight table. Number 21. Fried tomatoes on fried bread was the meal Mum made when payday was still 2 days off and the garden had done its bit. She halved a handful of tomatoes, seasoned them with salt and a pinch of sugar, and laid them cut side down in the buttery electric pan until they collapsed into something sweet and jammy. Alongside them, she crisped slices of bread in the same pan, soaking up all the pink juice. Tinned tomatoes did the job just as well out of season and cost only a few pence. The whole plate came together for next to nothing, yet tasted like far more. It was a summer supper and a hard times supper at once, depending on the week. Children remember the sharp, sweet burst of a hot tomato and the crunch beneath it. As frozen dinners arrived and homegrown veg dwindled, this simple, thrifty tea slipped away almost unnoticed. Number 20. Welsh rarebit gave the electric pan an unlikely job, and it did it beautifully. Mum grated a good lump of cheese, melted it slow in the pan with a splash of milk, a spoon of mustard, and a good shake of Worcestershire sauce until it turned to a thick, savoury sauce. She poured it over toast and, in pans with a lid, let it bubble and brown. It was miles better than plain cheese on toast, a proper supper dish that felt almost grand for how little it cost. A block of cheese ran to a shilling or two, and this stretched it a long way. The sharp, tangy smell filled the kitchen and drew everyone in. It was the meal for a Friday when meat had run out, but nobody would go to bed hungry. Grills and toasters made it quicker done elsewhere, and the pan version faded from memory. Number 19. Fried herring in oatmeal was the cheap fish supper that fed the coast and the terraces alike. Mum rolled fresh herring, split and boned, in seasoned oatmeal until they wore a rough grey coat, then laid them in the hot fat of the electric pan to fry until the crust turned crisp and golden and the flesh steamed sweet within. A wedge of lemon and a slice of bread and butter finished it. Herring were among the cheapest fish going, often just a few pence for enough to feed the whole family, and the National Food Survey counted them a working-class staple well into the 1950s. The oatmeal crackled, the kitchen smelled of the sea, and bones were picked clean. It was thrift and nourishment in one plate. As herring stocks fell and battered cod took over the nation's affections, this old northern supper quietly vanished. Number 18. Deviled kidneys sound like a Sunday luxury now, but once they were a quick and cheap weeknight tea. Mum bought lamb's kidneys from the butcher for a few pence, cored and halved them, and tossed them into the sizzling electric pan with butter, a spoon of mustard, a shake of cayenne, and a good splash of Worcestershire sauce. They cooked in minutes, staying pink and tender, coated in a hot, glossy sauce that begged for toast to mop it up. Cooked too long, they turned to leather, so the pan's steady heat was a blessing. The smell was rich and peppery, dividing the children who loved it from the ones who fled. It was offal at its most exciting, a dish that felt daring for how little it cost. As offal fell out of fashion and butchers closed their doors, the deviled kidney all but disappeared from the ordinary table. Number 17. Faggots and peas brought the taste of thrift from the butcher's window to the weeknight plate. Mum sometimes made her own from minced pig's liver, heart, and breadcrumbs bound with sage, rolled into balls and browned in the electric pan before being simmered in a rich onion gravy right there in the same dish. More often she bought them ready-made for a shilling or two and just heated them through with the gravy. Served with a mound of mushy peas and mash. It was a filling supper that asked little of the purse. The herbal savoury steam filled the kitchen, and fathers home from the factory ate with relish. It was a Midlands and Welsh favourite that spoke of using every scrap. Children learned early that nothing on the pig was wasted. When offal fell from favour and supermarkets sold pale, uniform versions, the proper faggot faded from everyday life. Number 16. Braised sausages in onion gravy stretched a packet of bangers into a supper with real substance. Mum browned the sausages all over in the electric pan, lifted them out, then softened a heap of sliced onions in the fat until they turned sweet and golden. A crumbled oxo cube, a spoon of flour, and a jug of water made a thick brown gravy, and back went the sausages to simmer gently until everything melded. Spooned over mash, it turned 6 sausages into a meal for a family. A packet of bangers cost around 1 and 6 in the 1960s, and the gravy did the work of making it feel like more. The smell of frying onions was the smell of tea being made. It was hearty, cheap, and endlessly reliable. Instant gravy granules and oven-ready meals slowly replaced the slow, simmered version, and it drifted from the weekly rotation. Number 15. Rissoles were how Mum made Sunday's leftovers last until Wednesday. She minced the cold remains of the roast, mixed them with mashed potato, a beaten egg, and a good shake of sage and onion, then shaped the lot into flat cakes and coated them in breadcrumbs. Into the hot electric pan they went, frying until each side wore a crisp brown crust, while the middle stayed soft and savory. A pool of gravy and a spoon of peas made it a proper tea from what would otherwise have gone to waste. Nothing new was bought, so the meal cost almost nothing at all. Children never guessed they were eating the last of the joint dressed up in breadcrumbs. It was resourcefulness you could taste. As roasts shrank and leftovers dwindled, and as ready-shaped burgers filled the freezers, the humble rissole quietly slipped away. Number 14. Gammon and pineapple was the electric pan's idea of glamour, a taste of the tropics on a wet Tuesday. Mum fried a thick gammon steak in the pan until the fat turned golden and the edges caught, then laid a ring of tinned pineapple on top to warm through and glaze in the salty juices. The sweet and salt combination felt daringly modern, borrowed from the swish restaurants of the day and brought home to the family table. A gammon steak was an affordable treat, and a tin of pineapple rings cost only a few pence. Served with chips and a fried egg, it was a small celebration on an ordinary night. The children thought fruit with meat was the height of sophistication. For a decade or two, it was the height of fashion. Then tastes turned, and the retro pairing became a punchline, vanishing from the weeknight menu. Number 13. Pork chops with fried apple rings brought a touch of the orchard to a busy evening. Mum seasoned the chops and browned them slow in the electric pan, letting the fat render down and the meat turn juicy right through. In the same pan, she fried rings of cooking apple in the pork fat until they softened and caramelized at the edges, sweet against the savory meat. It was a clever pairing that cost no more than the fruit already in the bowl, and it turned a plain chop into something worth sitting down for. The smell of pork and warm apple filled the house by tea time. Fathers home from a long shift found it waiting. It felt homely, and just a little special all at once. As chops grew pricier and quicker, meals took hold. The fried apple ring quietly disappeared from beside them. Number 12. Liver and onions divided the British table as sharply as any dish ever cooked. Mum fried a heap of sliced onions in the electric pan until soft and sweet, then laid in thin slices of lamb's or pig's liver, cooking them fast so they stayed tender and never turned bitter. A minute too long and they toughened, so the steady heat mattered. Smothered in onions and a thick gravy served with mash, it was cheap, quick, and packed with iron. Liver cost a fraction of steak, and Mum insisted it did the children good. Some loved it, some fled the metallic smell, but clean plates were expected all the same. It was offal at its most ordinary, on the table most weeks. As tastes shifted and offal fell from grace, and as fresh butcher's liver gave way to bitter sealed packs, this old faithful faded to a nostalgic memory. Number 11. Savory mince on toast was the fastest hot tea a busy mum could conjure. She browned a pound of mince in the electric pan, tipped in a chopped onion, a crumbled oxo cube, and a spoon of flour to thicken, then let it simmer down into a rich, brown, meaty mixture. Spooned over thick toast or a mound of mash, it fed the whole family in under half an hour. A pound of mince cost around 2 shillings and stretched further with the onion and gravy bulking it out. The smell of frying mince and oxo was the smell of 100 weeknight teas. It asked nothing of the cook but a stir now and then, leaving her free to see to the children. It was the definition of an easy dinner. Jars of ready-made sauce and freezer meals slowly took its place. Number 10. Curried mince was Britain's gentle first flirtation with the flavors of the world, cooked right there in the electric pan. Mum browned her mince and onions, then stirred in a spoon of Coleman's curry powder, a handful of sultanas, and a chopped apple for sweetness, letting it simmer into a mild, fragrant sauce that would have baffled a real cook from Madras, but delighted the children. Served over rice or mash, it felt exotic and adventurous on an ordinary night. The curry powder cost pennies and lasted for months. The warm, spiced smell drifting through the house was something new and thrilling in the post-war kitchen. It was a curry with the edges sanded off, made to please, and it did. As proper takeaways and jars of authentic sauce arrived, this sweet, sultana-studded mock curry quietly slipped from the family repertoire. Number 9. Chow mein, cooked from a Vesta packet, was the electric pan's ticket to the mysterious East. Mum tipped the dried noodles and sachets into the pan with a little water and oil, following the instructions on the box, and out came a sweet, salty tangle that tasted like nothing else in the British larder. There were even crispy noodles to scatter on top. A Vesta meal cost a few shillings and felt impossibly modern in the 1960s and 70s. A whole foreign dinner from a single box. Children thought they were the most sophisticated family on the street. It bore only a passing resemblance to real Chinese food, but nobody cared. It was an adventure on a plate. When actual Chinese takeaways opened on every high street, the dried packet version had no defense, and it vanished almost overnight, remembered now with a fond wince. Number 8. Sweet and sour pork carried on where the packet chow mein left off, made properly from scratch as families grew braver. Mum browned cubes of pork in the electric pan, then poured over a sauce of vinegar, sugar, tomato ketchup, and a tin of pineapple chunks, letting it bubble into a glossy, sticky glaze. A handful of sliced peppers made it colorful, and it went over rice with a flourish. It cost little more than a plain pork dish, but tasted like a night out at the new Chinese restaurant. The sharp, sweet smell was unlike anything the old kitchen had known. It felt like the family had grown worldly. For a while, it was the proud centerpiece of a special weeknight tea. As real takeaways and jarred sauces took over, the homemade version, ketchup and all, drifted out of fashion and out of the pan. Number 7. Beef stroganoff was the electric pan at its most ambitious, the dish Mum made when she wanted the table to feel a little bit grand. Here comes the sophisticated one. She fried strips of steak fast in the pan, softened onions and mushrooms in the buttery juices, then stirred in a carton of soured cream and a shake of paprika to make a rich, pale, luxurious sauce. Served over rice and often cooked at the table so guests could watch, it was the height of dinner party glamour in the 1970s. Frying steak was dearer than the week's usual fare, but a little went a long way in the creamy sauce. The smell was rich and buttery, unlike any thrifty weeknight tea. It felt cosmopolitan, a taste of somewhere far away. As dinner parties faded and the electric pan was banished to the loft, the tableside stroganoff faded with it. Number 6. The Spanish omelette let Mum turn a handful of leftovers into a golden supper the whole family could share. She fried sliced cold potato and onion in the electric pan until soft, poured over a jug of beaten eggs, and let the whole thing set slow into a thick, sunny cake studded with whatever needed using up: peas, a bit of ham, a chopped tomato. Cut into wedges, it fed everyone, hot or cold. Eggs and a few potatoes cost almost nothing, and nothing went to waste. The pan's flat, Even heat was perfect for setting it right through without burning the base. It was thrift dressed up as something continental and clever. Children liked the surprise of finding a pea or a scrap of ham in every slice. As tastes changed and quicker meals took over, this generous, frugal omelette slipped from the weekly rotation. Number 5. Meatballs in gravy stretched a pound of mince into a supper that felt far more generous than its cost. Mum mixed the mince with breadcrumbs, onion, and a beaten egg, rolled it into little balls, and browned them all over in the electric pan before simmering them slow in a thick onion gravy made in the same dish. Spooned over mash or a nest of spaghetti, it fed a hungry family with room to spare. The breadcrumbs did the clever work, bulking out the meat so a shilling's worth went round everyone. The smell of frying meatballs and gravy was pure comfort on a cold night. Children counted their meatballs jealously and swapped them like treasure. It was homely, filling, and endlessly forgiving. As frozen meatballs and jarred sauces filled the supermarket freezers, the handmade weeknight version quietly gave up its place at the table. Number 4. Kedgeree brought a whisper of the old empire to the busy British tea time, all cooked in the one pan. Mum flaked cooked smoked haddock into the electric pan with boiled rice, a couple of chopped hard-boiled eggs, a knob of butter, and a dusting of curry powder, warming it all through into a fragrant golden heap. It had begun as a grand Victorian breakfast, but by the mid-century it had become a thrifty one-pan supper that used up leftover fish and rice, a treat. Smoked haddock was cheap, and the dish stretched a little of it a long way. The mild, spiced smell was gentle and comforting. Children who turned their noses up at plain fish somehow ate this happily. It was homely and just a touch exotic all at once. As smoked fish grew scarcer on the everyday plate and habits changed, Kedgeree retreated to the weekend, and then almost out of sight. Number 3. Braised steak and onions was the electric pan's answer to the Sunday roast on a weeknight. Tenderness coaxed from the cheapest cut with nothing but time. Mum browned slices of chuck or braising steak in the pan, buried them under a mountain of sliced onions, poured in a jug of stock thickened with an OXO cube, and clamped the lid down to let it barely bubble for an hour or more. The tough meat turned meltingly soft. The onions dissolved into a dark, rich gravy, and the whole house smelled of proper dinner by tea time. Braising steak cost far less than a joint, yet fed the family like one. The pan's low, steady heat did the work while Mum saw to everything else. It was patience rewarded, cheap made luxurious. As slow cookers and ready meals took over the long, slow jobs, the braised steak faded from the weekly menu. Number 2. EGG and chips was the meal that needed no recipe, the one every British mum could make in her sleep. She heated a good depth of fat or oil in the electric pan, its thermostat holding the temperature so the chips came out crisp and golden rather than greasy, then fried an egg alongside with a lacy, crisp edge and a soft yolk. A shake of salt, a splash of vinegar, and it was tea. Potatoes cost pennies, eggs little more, and this fed a family for next to nothing on the busiest night imaginable. The smell of frying chips said home like nothing else. Children asked for it more than any grand dinner. It was simple, cheap, and adored without reservation. As oven chips and the deep fat fryer took over, and health advice turned against the frying pan of fat, this most beloved of quick teas slowly slipped out of everyday life. And finally, in first place, the mixed grill crowned the electric frying pan as the appliance's proudest achievement, a whole feast cooked in a single dish. On a busy Friday, Mum would fill that wide pan edge to edge, a sausage here, a rasher of bacon there, a lamb chop, a kidney, a halved tomato, a flat mushroom, and an egg tucked into the last corner, everything sizzling together over the steady thermostatic heat. It was the fry-up raised to a banquet, all the treats of the week arriving on one plate at once. It cost more than a plain tea, so it was a reward, saved for the end of a hard week or a small celebration. The smell of it drew the whole family to the table before the call even came. Children eyed the sausages and bargained over the egg. No other dish showed off the pan's great flat surface so gloriously, cooking 8 different things at once without a single ring of the hob in use. It was the meal the electric frying pan was born to make. As the appliance itself was packed away to the loft and the grill and oven took back their old jobs, the one-pan mixed grill vanished, and with it went the quiet weeknight magic of that humming pan on the worktop. So there they are, 25 dinners that pan gave us, and time quietly took away. Try just one this week: the corned beef hash, the braised steak, the egg and chips your mum used to make, and see if it doesn't taste like coming home. Then tell me in the comments which one your mum cooked and whether her electric frying pan is still up in the loft somewhere, waiting.